What if looking like someone else could cost you your freedom or even your humanity? This is the haunting story of Sporus, a Roman slave whose delicate features caught the eye of Emperor Nero. His only crime was resembling Nero's dead wife. What followed was one of history's darkest tragedies. Rome, the beating heart of the ancient world, was drowning in chaos. The streets buzzed with rumors, the amphitheaters roared with blood, and the smell of smoke often lingered in the air, as if fire itself had become part of the city's soul. This was not the Rome of marble statues and noble senators that history books love to glorify. This was a Rome trembling under the shadow of its most infamous ruler, Nero. The people. Nero was both a god and a monster. He sang on stage like a performer desperate for applause, yet ordered executions with a shrug, as though life meant nothing. He built golden palaces while ordinary Romans struggled to survive. And behind his mask of brilliance was a storm of rage, paranoia, and desire that no one could control. The empire held its breath, because every whim of the emperor could mean life or death. One wrong glance, one careless word, and anyone from a senator to a slave could find themselves crushed under his power. But even Rome had not seen the full depth of Nero's madness yet. For soon, his obsession would fall on one innocent boy, and nothing could save him. Before Sporus, there was Poppaea Sabina. To the world, she was the radiant empress, beautiful, ambitious, and cunning enough to climb her way into Nero's bed. She became his second wife, a woman whose charm seemed to tame even the wildest storms in the emperor's heart. But love in Nero's Rome was never safe. Poppaea was pregnant when tragedy struck. In a drunken rage, Nero lashed out and struck her down, killing both her and the unborn child. Historians say it was an accident, but in Rome, accidents often wore the face of cruelty. With her death, Nero lost more than a wife. He lost the one person who had made him feel almost human. The emperor fell into despair, haunted by guilt, grief, and longing. Yet his grief did not soften him, it twisted him further. He could not accept that Poppaea was gone. For a man who commanded armies and reshaped cities, why should death itself stand in his way? It was in this darkness that Nero's obsession was born. He searched for her reflection, desperate to bring her back, even if it meant bending another life into her shadow. And that search led him to Sporus. Sporus was young, delicate, and innocent. A slave with golden hair and soft features, he could never have imagined how dangerous his resemblance to the empress would become. When Nero first laid eyes on him, it was as if the emperor's grief suddenly had a vessel. Sporus looked like Poppaea reborn. But Nero's love was never gentle. He did not ask, he commanded. And so, Sporus' fate was sealed. The boy was forcibly castrated, his identity erased, his body mutilated to fit Nero's fantasy. He was dressed in fine silks, paraded in jewels, and renamed Poppaea. To the world, he was no longer a slave boy. He was the emperor's wife. Imagine the horror to be trapped in a body not your own, forced to live as someone else, simply because the most powerful man alive willed it so. The Romans whispered. The senators mocked behind closed doors, but no one dared defy Nero. Sporus became a symbol of the emperor's madness, a grotesque reminder that even the boundaries of gender and humanity were meaningless when crushed under absolute power. For Sporus, survival meant submission. To resist was death. To comply was humiliation beyond words. In the golden halls of Rome, under the gaze of a mad emperor, his soul was imprisoned in a role he had never chosen. Nero did not simply make Sporus his companion. He made him his spectacle. Rome had always loved theater, but Nero turned life itself into a performance. And Sporus, against his will, became the star. The emperor staged a grand wedding. Guests were invited, musicians played, and vows were exchanged. But instead of a bride, it was a mutilated slave boy standing beside him, dressed in the robes of an empress. The crowd gasped. Some laughed nervously, others whispered in horror. Yet none dared to speak openly, for fear of death. Nero declared Sporus his lawful spouse, and Rome was forced to accept the charade. He paraded Sporus in public, calling him Papa Ia, kissing him before the people, forcing the illusion that the empress had returned. For Nero, it was both a love story and a cruel game. For Sporus, it was torment beyond measure. Every glance reminded him that he was no longer himself but a reflection of someone else's ghost. Historians debate whether Nero truly loved Sporus or merely loved his own power to defy reality itself. But one thing is certain: the boy who had once been free in his own identity was now a prisoner of a dead woman's face. When Nero died in 68 CE, many thought Sporus would finally be free. But history rarely grants mercy. Instead, his nightmare continued under Rome's shifting ruler Otho, who had once been married to Poppaea before Nero stole her away, took Sporus as his own. Historians believe it was revenge, a twisted act meant to claim what Nero had claimed. But for Sporus, it was just another chain. From Nero's mock marriage to Otho's possession, he was passed like property, never seen as a person. Then came Vitellius, Rome's short-lived emperor. Unlike the others, Vitellius had no love or revenge in his motives. He sought only humiliation. He ordered Sporus to play the role of a woman on stage, preparing him for a public spectacle that would degrade him before the entire city. For Sporus, this was the breaking point. Rather than endure further shame, he chose his final act of defiance. Before the performance could take place, Sporus took his own life. It was the only choice left that was truly his. Rome had taken his youth, his body, and his identity. But in death, Sporus reclaimed one thing Nero and his successors could never control: his freedom. The story of Sporus is not just a tragedy of one boy in ancient Rome. It is a mirror held up to power, showing how far absolute authority can twist the boundaries of humanity. For Nero, Sporus was not a person but an object, a vessel for grief, a puppet for performance, a possession to shape into his will. By controlling Sporus, Nero believed he could conquer death itself, resurrecting the wife he had lost. But in doing so, he destroyed an innocent life. History remembers Nero as a mad emperor, but Sporus' story reminds us of something more important: the victims. Those who had no voice, no choice, and no escape. For every emperor who rewrote history in marble and gold, there were countless lives erased in silence. Sporus' life also forces us to question identity and survival. What does it mean to live when you are denied the right to be yourself? For Sporus, survival meant wearing another's face. But even in his silence, his story has outlived empires. Today, his name surfaces not as a footnote to Nero's reign, but as a haunting symbol of resilience in the face of unimaginable cruelty. His suffering exposes the dark heart of power and reminds us why unchecked authority is the most dangerous force of all. Rome has fallen. Its emperors are dust. Yet the story of a boy forced to live as a ghost lingers, warning us that when power strips away humanity, history never forgets.